These are the 10 biggest technology lawsuits that changed the world forever. Number 7. Epic Games versus the Federal Trade Commission. Have you heard of COPPA?
You're going to want to sit down.
The Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act, or COPPA, was established to provide very strict guidelines to protect the privacy of young children on the internet. So, for example, kids under the age of 13 can't have a YouTube or Instagram account. They need their parents' permission before making any online transaction, stuff like that. And Epic Games, the creator of the hit game Fortnite, was sued by the FTC for violating children's privacy. Epic were alleged to have collected information of Fortnite players under the age of 13 without their parents' consent. Fortnite also allowed online voice and chat communication without their parents' consent. Oh no. Imagine playing a battle royale with a bunch of perverts and pedophiles. No! Shame on you, Epic. Epic eventually settled the case outside the courts and agreed to pay the largest COPPA fine of over $500 million. This is by far the largest COPPA violation in the history of COPPA violations. Number 6. Facebook versus Harvard Connect. In 2002, 3 friends at Harvard, namely Tyler Winklevoss, Cameron Winklevoss, and Divya Narendra, conceived of a social media website that allowed students to connect with each other on the internet. They called it Harvard Connect, which later on came to be known as Connect You. You could add people as friends, send them messages, update your personal profile, usual social media stuff. To create this website, they enlisted the help of a few programmers from Harvard, but nothing seemed to work out. In November of 2003, upon the referral of one of these early programmers, a short, curly-haired programming genius named Mark Zuckerberg joined Harvard Connect. For the next 2 months, Mark constantly stalled the Winklevosses while working on his own version of Harvard Connect, the Facebook.com. The Winklevosses and Divya Narendra sued Mark for copying the idea. Is there anyone I can sue for stealing my ideas? Mark eventually settled with the Connect You guys for around $65 million. We don't know what the world would have been without Facebook. What we can say is that this tiny little website that was meant to impress chicks in college dorms would go on to dominate the internet for years to come. Number 5. Apple versus the FBI. In 2016, the Federal Bureau of Investigation filed a request against Apple to unlock an iPhone belonging to a terrorist, but Apple refused to comply. In response, the FBI filed a lawsuit against Apple with the sole purpose of creating a backdoor way to access data from any iPhone device. In an interesting turn of events, Apple turned out to be the good guys for once. They continued to refuse the FBI, stating that the data on any iPhone is end-to-end encrypted, which means no one can unlock the iPhone other than the user, not even Apple. And even if they were to hypothetically create a backdoor software, it would leave every iPhone in the entire world to be vulnerable to this exploit. The backlash to the FBI was so large that in April of 2016, a pro-Apple protest, yeah, you heard that right. Pro-Apple protest took place in 30 international cities. This reinvigorated the age-old debate of privacy versus protection. On March 28, 2016, the Department of Justice withdrew the case after mounting pressure.
That's wrong. No. Because if I got a phone and someone, I don't want no one listening. I don't want no one listening.
Number 4. Facebook versus the FTC. As we saw earlier, Facebook was built on very shady grounds. Back in 2014, Facebook allowed developers to create apps and games on top of the Facebook platform. Some of the world's most popular apps and games were available on Facebook. All that was needed to use these apps was for you to give up all your personal data, your Facebook data, and all your friends' data too. A data mining firm called Cambridge Analytica improperly got access to more than 87 million profiles through a third-party Facebook app called This Is Your Digital Life. It all culminated during the 2016 US general election. After a sting operation, it was found that Cambridge Analytica created fake stories and posts that were amplified on Facebook to sway the election in favor of Donald Trump. Experts still dispute if this tactic worked in actuality, but what became very clear was that developers and hackers could create psychographic profiles of Facebook users just by knowing what posts they liked and what they disliked. In response, a class action lawsuit was filed by the FTC against Meta, which they settled for $725 million in 2023.
There's families of victims here today. Have you apologized to the victims? Would you like to do so now?
Well,
They're here. You're on national television. Would you like now to apologize to the victims who have been harmed by your product?
Number 3. Viacom versus YouTube. Back in 2007, only 2 years after its creation, YouTube found itself in some big trouble. So big that it threatened the existence of the platform entirely. Just like today, YouTube was a place where people all over the world could share random bits of interesting video content. Better yet, creators were compensated for their content with advertising money. But this kind of created its own problem. People started uploading other people's copyrighted content on YouTube. At one point, entire movies were uploaded by random folks, which absolutely pissed off movie production companies. And Viacom, the creators of SpongeBob SquarePants and
15 minutes later.
pounced on this opportunity the first chance they got. They sued YouTube for $1 billion back when YouTube wasn't even profitable. And to be honest, they had a case. YouTube was causing substantial monetary damage to Viacom by allowing valuable intellectual property like SpongeBob and to be monetized by anyone and everyone. In order to make their case even more watertight, Viacom execs instructed more than 18 marketing agencies to create hundreds of fake YouTube profiles. They then uploaded Viacom content on these fake profiles to showcase how prevalent the issue of copyright infringement was on the platform. At one point, they had so many fake profiles that they couldn't identify which content they wanted to keep on the platform and which they wanted to take down. This ruse was caught by the lawyers at YouTube, and the judge ruled against Viacom because if Viacom cannot identify their own content, how are YouTube expected to do the same? Viacom would have most likely won the case if it weren't for this stupid shithousery. You could easily imagine a world where every production company under the sun would have demanded compensation for copyright damage. YouTube would have been just another project Google euthanized and sent to the cleaners. Rest in peace, Google Glasses. Number 2. United States versus Microsoft. In the early 1980s, there were a lot of operating systems just like Windows and Mac OS, but none of them had the functionality nor the applications to make them useful as a personal computer. That's where Bill Gates and Microsoft won the operating system wars. They started bundling programs like Microsoft Paint, Excel, and Calendar pre-installed with the operating system itself. This made Microsoft absolutely unstoppable. By the 90s, they had more than 80% of the OS market share. But this tactic of bundling important applications with the operating system was seen by rivals as bullying, because Microsoft was leveraging its market dominance to kill the ecosystem of third-party developers. Who would want to build an app for Windows when Microsoft could just copy what you've built, add a few features on top of it, and stick it on the desktop? This all culminated in 1998 when Netscape, which was the dominant browser back in the day, was usurped by Internet Explorer using the same bundling tactics. As a response, the founders of Netscape wrote a white paper which was shared to the United States Department of Justice. A week after the launch of Windows 98, the DOJ filed what was to become the Microsoft antitrust case. This is where we get a glimpse of one of the most shady and evasive depositions you will ever see.
Intuit would have to stop, quote, supporting, close quote, or could no longer, quote, support, close quote, the Netscape browser.
What does it mean when you keep going in and out of quotes like that?
It means you use the word supporting or you use the word support. Mr. Gates, is the term proprietary API a term that is commonly used in your business?
Let me give you
All I'm trying to do is get
the
an answer to
common
my question.
meanings that those words could have, and then you can pick one of them and ask me a question about it.
No,
It
all
can
I'm
be
doing-
just,
Let him
do you
finish
want me
it.
to
Oh, just let him
define
finish it.
proprietary API or
No,
not?
I don't want you to define proprietary API. I didn't ask you to define proprietary API. I asked you a simple question
It
as
has-
to whether the term proprietary API was commonly used in your business.
The DOJ and Microsoft eventually settled the case, and Microsoft was required to comply with the US government every time they added a new app to the desktop. Netscape eventually spun off into a new open source project called Mozilla Firefox. Today, most big tech companies are fighting antitrust lawsuits for the same reason as Microsoft did. Before we continue, remember to smash that like button if you enjoyed the video and learned something interesting. And subscribe for more top 10s on science, tech, and research. Let's get to 1,000 subs before April 2024. Number 1. Metallica versus Napster. Back in the early 2000s, the only legal way to listen to music was to go out, buy a physical CD, and then play it in your PC or Mac. But there were a few big problems with this entire business model. Most albums had one or maybe two songs that you really wanted to listen to. But to listen to those two songs, you'd have to buy a CD with like 15 crappy songs on it, and it cost like $20 or so. Another problem with this model was that artists had to go through these large record companies to have their music in stores. The record labels knew that the power wasn't in the music, it was in the distribution. And this is where Napster comes in. It was a peer to peer music sharing system where anyone on the internet had access to your computer's data, and in turn, you got access to everyone else's computer data. Sharing is caring. People all over the internet started sharing music with each other for free. At its peak, more than 20 million users were pirating music using Napster. And this is back in 2001, where you had to disconnect your telephone just to access the internet. That is crazy. A lot of record labels and big artists came together to file a lawsuit against Napster. One of the largest and most vocal opponents against Napster was the famous rock band Metallica. In June of 2001, Napster was ordered to close down their operations by the court. But it was already too late for the music industry. Tens of hundreds of Napster copycats like Kazaa and LimeWire emerged. This absolutely crushed the music industry with CD sales at an all-time low. So when Steve Jobs came in and proposed a new digital solution called iTunes, the record labels had no choice but to forego distribution. iTunes gave rise to legitimate streaming services like Spotify, Pandora, and YouTube Music.
The march of technology is a good thing, not a bad thing. The fact that it uniquely affected us was the way of life, really.
Did you live through any of these lawsuits? Have any interesting stories? Share it down in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.